Fall camp is officially underway for the Salukis as head coach Nick Hill and the Dogs. A lot of excitement early on in camp, and that's even when the feel-like temperature has been 110 degrees plus. That doesn't even factor in how it feels like on the turf. So great to welcome Saluki Nation back in. Alongside Mike Trude, I am Luke Martin, the third member of our broadcast crew, Pat Poor. He's a little busy right now, but he'll be joining us throughout the year as well with content for Saluki football. Mike, the energy level's been great out here, and that says a lot because it has been brutally hot the last couple of days. But the guys and the coaches are not making any excuses. They've been getting a lot of work done.
No, it's been just unbelievably humid this time of year. That's kind of what happens, but the players have fought through it very well. They've been really careful about hydrating. Whenever the players feel they need some water, they've been letting them take their water breaks. You don't want anybody cramping up. You don't want anybody getting sick. So everything has been upbeat so far. It's been really, really fun to watch.
Well, one of the main things we saw early in camp last year was that the defense was going to be really good. That was really early on, some of those observations. Now as we get into camp this year, there's definitely maybe a little bit more of unknown. There's still a lot of returners that are back, like a Colin Bohannon, an Iverson Brown, and Ubaid Steed. So there's going to be names that people know on the defensive side. What do you have your eye on? What are you just more curious about here in the early going?
I'm curious about the defensive line. Everybody who played there last year, basically starting-wise, left. So a lot of the reserves played a lot of snaps last year and have played a lot of snaps throughout their careers, but it's now their turn to step up and be the guys on that front four. Maybe it's going to be 6, 7, 8 guys who eventually make up that defensive line. But right now, they're a little bit unproven at that level of a team that held, the fourth best scoring defense in the country a year ago.
Well, on the other side of that, we saw DJ Johnson a ton on the outside, and we also saw, of course, Mark Davis, consistency there. A lot of new names going to be in the DB spot, but Antonio James told us this week feels really good about that room, especially Jameer Khan, who they liked a year ago and played. And then Dev Walton's had a good fall camp thus far, knowing that it's early.
Yeah, it's been nice, and the best part is you've got Brown and Steed back there to kind of guide everybody. From a year ago, they played just about every down. So the experience is in the deep defensive secondary, and I think the leadership is there to guide the younger guys. And Jameer Khan is a name that we brought up a lot a year ago, special teams-wise. He got in on defense as well. He is going to, I believe, make a name for himself this year.
Well, and Colin Bohannon, can't forget about Colin. I know we're going to talk about these units more specifically when we get throughout camp, but it's clear he's the guy. He's really the glue that holds everybody together, and the coaches have been just speaking glowingly about him.
When he and Tim Vargas and Jalen Benefield came over last year, everybody was going, okay, they came from Eastern Illinois. What kind of competition did they play? How good are they? Well, we found in a hurry that all three guys were amazing. Varga obviously graduated, but Bohannon just put himself in the middle, and now he's going to be the leader of what was the strongest part of the team last year, was the linebackers. I think they're going to surprise some people this year as well. They had such depth a year ago that to step up just that, I think it's only a half step up versus a whole step up. I think the linebacking crew is going to be fine, led by Colin.
And if the coaches and players feel like they may be deeper this year, that says a lot. We'll see how that eventually comes to fruition once games start. Okay, on the offensive side, there's no storylines, not so whatsoever.
No.
I don't think our fans know what they want to hear about. Look, no more Nick Baker. That's the obvious one. The quarterback position is what everybody will go to. There is kind of an old cliche of if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. But I do feel like early in camp, the coaches, the players, they really like both DJ Williams and Hunter Simmons, and both are splitting time right now at the ones.
Yeah, we noticed it on the first day of practice. It was Hunter who got to work with the ones. Yesterday, it was DJ getting to work with the ones. I think Nick's going to do that to give them both the opportunity to showcase their skills with the ones before he decides what he wants to do. DJ Williams has the most experience, freshman of the year 3 years ago, then got hurt, but last year still threw for over 1,500 yards for Murray. He's got over 2,500 yards in his career. Hunter Simmons is a guy who played very sparingly. Why? Because Nick Baker. Nick was the steadfast quarterback for all that time. When Hunter came in, he got to work with the ones very rarely. So he might have the strongest arm of any quarterback in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, and we've seen early on in practice he's letting it fly.
We always love to talk about our buddy Dan Clark up front with his offensive line, but man, you could just sense early Noah Fenske makes a difference. Obviously, I know Chase has been huge, sliding over now to the center position primarily this year, but it's a group that felt there was going to be depth last year. There was a lot of consistency because there weren't a lot of injuries up front, and you knock on wood that can be the case again this year. But now this year is going to be interesting, Mike, to see if there will actually be true depth up front on the offensive line.
They had so many young freshmen and sophomores a year ago, true freshmen and sophomores, that weren't up to snuff yet to be able to fill in if something did happen to a Derek Harden or those guys along the way. All the preseason prognostications don't even mention Noah Fenske as being part of that offensive line. And what did Noah do a few weeks ago? Just squatted 700 pounds. So he's going to be the guy that's protecting the quarterback on that left side. I don't have a worry about the offensive line, even with an injury or two. Dan Clark has more depth this year than I think I've seen an offensive line in maybe 5 or 6 years. With the numbers, have they made the progression from last year to this year?
As offensive coordinator Blake Rowland told us, it's the year of Dan Clark. That's what he says for his group.
And we're all for that.
we're all for that. Let's move to the skilled spot. That may be where the question marks lie because there's so many guys who are gone that were mainstays in the running back room and the receiver room. But there is just a quiet confidence, maybe is the best way to portray it, Mike, of how those groups specifically feel about their rooms.
Yeah, one thing Coach Hill has done the last few years is taken transfers. Yes, they've been good athletically, but they've been good people, good culture people. And he looks at that first before he looks to see if they can run a 4.2 40 or catch 40 passes in a year. He's been very good with his transfers, and he's brought in some receivers who not only have speed, but have seemed to have just fit right in with the offensive flow. And I look, they're not going to be an Avante Cox. Not yet anyway. But a couple of them have the speed that Avante had. They're bigger than Avante was. And I think we've seen the last few years in the Valley Football Conference, the bigger you are at the wide receiver position with speed, the better chance you have.
And with that speed, with athleticism, should be a lot to watch for as we continue throughout the rest of fall camp. We'll be along the ride with you, checking in with you each and every week. Next week, we'll have a check-in, a little bit more of a deep dive preview of that offensive side with some more notes coming from you, Mike Trude and yours truly. Be sure to stay plugged in for the rest of our fall camp coverage, which this year is powered by the Illinois National Guard. For my partner, Mike Trude, I am Luke Martin. We'll check in with you next week, Saluki Nation.